Welcome to episode 4. Cool. Episode 4 of Urban Agoge Season 2. Got some cool things to show you. I'm going to go right in with a philosophy warning. So in my opinion, the key aspect of the sort of person that I want to make this TV show for, and somebody that wanted to get into wild camping or bushcrafting in general, is the ability to improvise. If you're going to be out in nature, the rewarding bit, in my humble opinion, is when you look at the resources you've got around you and use your skill at improvising things that you need out of those resources. Now those resources could be wood, grass, herbs, fruit, fish, your ability to hunt or catch fish, your ability to use rocks to do things, and the ability to use your tools with those natural resources, even if that natural resource is litter, to achieve things that you otherwise weren't going to be able to do. And that's the real joy of being outside, in my opinion. All the cool things I've ever done, I've basically chalked that up to my ability to improvise. So if you've got wood near you and one of the sticks is reasonably straight and you've got the ability to make fire, you can improvise a spear. And we'll be showing that later in the series. If you've got a river and there are rocks, you could have a look in Paleolithic history and see whether you could build a fish trap. If you know that there are fish swimming around in the tide, and you can build a big spiral made out of river rocks, you could possibly build a fish trap. So if you want fish for dinner, and if you ever think of bushcrafting as a set of survival skills, you best learn to fish, because most woodland doesn't provide nearly enough edibles for you to, say, be vegan or not have to hunt. And fishing is one of the easiest methods of hunting. If you brought along a packet of noodles and you find some edible mushrooms and some edible fruit, you can upgrade your meal. That's improvising. And if you don't think a wooden spear is a weapon, you have a chat with a Zulu. They were still fighting people with spears in the 1850s. It's not unknown for them to fight with spears today. It's an amazing weapon. Even a short stabbing spear like an assegai. So, we learn bushcrafting skills by trying to recreate what our ancestors have done. We learn to improvise shelter. We can learn to improvise parts of that shelter. Anybody that's ever gone hammock camping and put up a wooden windbreak to make their environment warmer, or a windbreak behind their fire so the fire heat gets reflected towards them a bit more. And also, building a windbreak, it dries out potential firewood too, so that's always a good thing. Especially on your last night, you can pull down the windbreaks, process them down into usable firewood, and have your last night's fire with less wood gathering. So so I'm sorry this is a bit of a philosophy bit and I'm not showing you anything particular, but I don't know, look up things like Ray Mears' Wild Britain. Have a go at improvising shelters when you don't have to. Bushcraft is kind of like the whole train hard, fight easy idea. If you know exactly what you're going to do ahead of time, you save yourself an amazing amount of time and stress by being able to look around and go, I can use this, this and this, and everybody will be significantly more comfortable. When they're significantly more comfortable, they're going to be more capable of thinking. You want to stop people being cold, you want to stop people being hungry or thirsty or tired. As good a night, your best weapon in survival is a really good night's sleep. Allows you to plan better and allows you to get the dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin and endorphins running, so your brain is actually on your side. Remember we talked about that in the first episode of Urban Agoge. The dose. Dopamine for I have done a thing or I have planned a thing. Oxytocin is basically the belonging chemical. Serotonin is the it's kind of like you get serotonin when you're satisfied, and the endorphin is working towards a goal and then stopping the runner's high. So yeah, you know, improvisation will help you out with all four of those chemicals, and a sunnier disposition, well rested, well fed, is going to make a lot of difference to anybody you're trying to help survive, as well as yourself. So yeah, philosophy rant over. Back to the episode. And now here's another section from Harlequin on the fun things you can do with rope. And now here's a section from someone that's more than qualified to tell you about their first aid kit that they take with them everywhere. Run VT, MG.
Hello, this is Misanthropic Gods, and I'm going to be talking to you today about my standard issue first aid kit. So, some of you may recognize my name. I know that I've been mentioned a few times on the show, but this is the first time that I'm actually going to be doing a video contribution to Urban Agoge. And the thing that I decided to talk about today is, like I said, my standard issue first aid kit. Now, I see a lot of first aid kits out there that are either lacking in materials or have too much, in my personal opinion. And I am a trained firefighter paramedic as well as a stop the bleed instructor, so I do have quite a bit of training under my belt, and I do feel like I at least know one thing or two about medical gear. But this is just what I like to personally carry with me whenever I am out and about and doing all kinds of different stuff. I have also made a lot of these kits for other people, especially the people that I care about the most. I have provided them with those as well, and this is kind of my standard go-to basic first aid kit. This isn't any type of trauma, severe trauma treatment. There's no tourniquets or anything like that in this kit. I might go over a kit like that in the future, but this is just your basic layman's kit. And it really does cover most of your bases unless you have a major trauma or something like that. So, without further ado, here is my standard issue first aid kit. First off, the bag that I have here is actually my recce/adventure kit, is kind of what I call it. I don't really have a set name for it, but this is the bag that I tend to grab whenever I'm going out and I'm doing any type of adventuring, or I'm going to be going out for the day, I'm going to be outdoors and doing stuff like that. So this is actually a Camelback Ambush is the exact name of this one. It does have a 3-liter water bladder in it, but it does also have this nice pouch here right at the top that is very, very, very useful, and I have modified it a little bit. I have some shot cord here. I'll be going over the contents of this specific kit and its use at a later date, but right now we're just going to focus on the first aid kit, which is right here in the lid. Very easy to access, and as you can see here, very well labeled. It's clear, it's see-through. You can see through both sides. I am actually planning on upgrading in the near future to one that is only clear on one side, but that does have some further advantages. So this kit is actually vacuum sealed. I do have a vacuum sealer. I did do this myself, so this is all set up by myself and then vacuum sealed after that. I am looking to upgrade the bag that it is in the near future. I have found a bag that is black on one side, clear on the other, vacuum sealed. It's actually open on one end. You slide all your materials in. It's already sealed on the other end. And then whenever you're done, you can vacuum seal it. It'll be nice and tight and waterproof as well. But it will have the same tear notches here, but below it there's actually a zip lock, which is very, very, very useful and really nice, because with this kit right here, unfortunately, if you break it open, it is no longer waterproof and it doesn't have any way to close after that. So that's one thing that I am looking to upgrade in this kit. Alright, let's crack this kit open and actually start getting into some of the contents. So as you can see, it opens very easily, no problems at all. Right on the top and right nice and prominent are things that really are important for yourself if you're having to treat somebody else, which is PPE. So what I do have here is 2 sets of gloves. They're nitrile gloves. They're bright orange. I have them wrapped up in napkin rings is what these are. These are paper napkin rings with little self-adhesive bands on them. So you pop it open and then you have a really nice rolled up glove, individual glove kit. There's 2 of them. Each one has 2 gloves. And I really like to have these like this because they're small, they're portable, it helps protect them from UV rays with the band there, and it also makes them really easy to keep them separate, so you know you have one pair of gloves here. Another thing that I like to mention is having a light colored glove is very important in my own personal opinion. I know a lot of people like the tactical black nitrile gloves, but the problem with these is that if you're doing an assessment or if you're covered in bodily fluids, specifically blood, you can't see it on those dark gloves. On these bright gloves, you can write on them if you need to, just if you can use them as an impromptu jotting pad if you have a pen with you or a marker, or you can also see the bodily fluids on it if you're, doing a sweep for a gunshot wound, or if you just have blood on it and you don't want to touch yourself or touch any of your gear with blood on your hands. Having light colored gloves really makes a big difference. So we have 2 pairs of those gloves here. Another thing that I have is 2 surgical masks. Now normally I wouldn't have carried these before and I wouldn't have put these in a kit, but it's 2020 and we're in the middle of a global pandemic, so having a mask for yourself and a mask for your potential patient is very important. It's at least trying to help keep yourself a little bit more safe. This is a thing that I just started putting into this kit just this year. Haven't had to use it yet, but it's really nice to be able to have at least another mask or 2 available for yourself and for the other person, just in case, because really, you have to protect yourself. What I also have in here is 2 sachets of gel hand sanitizer, just in these little individually packed sachets. Really good. 2 of them just so you have enough, just to make sure to try and help keep yourself safe if you do have to treat somebody else. Most of this is meant to treat yourself, but just in case you do have to treat someone else, it's really good to have these in there too. I found those little packets and they work great. I also have a whole bunch of painkillers. I have different types because they have different uses, and some people have allergies or aren't very receptive to some of the other different types. I actually have one friend who is only able to take naproxen. Advil and aspirin and stuff like that doesn't really work for him. He has to take naproxen. So I make sure to keep 2 of those in there, which is Aleve. Aleve, the generic, is naproxen sodium. I do like to have these little individually packaged foil packs because they have the brand name on there, they have all of the dosing instructions and all of that stuff, and it doesn't look suspicious at all. It's somebody sees it, then it's no big deal. They know exactly what it is, and they're not going to jam you up for having pills that are in an unmarked container. So it is nice to have these little pill packets. They're more expensive, but you can find them. Gas stations, dollar stores, and places like that tend to have them. But it is nice to be able to have everything with all the labeling on it. And I do have, like I said, naproxen sodium, which is Aleve, ibuprofen, which is Advil, and then acetaminophen, which is Tylenol. And the good thing about Tylenol is not only is it a pain reliever, but it is also a fever reducer as well. So if you do happen to have any type of fever, this can help you out too. And it really does make a big difference. It's like the first line thing that they give anybody whenever they have a fever, if they're in the hospital or anything like that. So having those there works really well. I also have a sachet of calmoseptine. This is pretty much an all-purpose moisture barrier. It helps, if there's any type of skin irritation, if you have any type of poison ivy or anything like that, itching, bug bites, stuff like that. This isn't something that you can find that readily. I happen to just kind of end up with a couple of samples of these, but it does work pretty well if you do happen to use it. So I do like to keep this in there, especially if I'm outdoors, just for bug bites, poison ivy, stuff like that. I also keep a few Q-tips. It's really good if you do get something in your ear, or you got something that you need to try and clean up. But the big thing that I actually keep them in the first aid kit for is because it's really good to get stuff out of people's eyes, is being able to use the nice clean Q-tip to just dab at something. If it's stuck to their eye, it's not actually in their eye, but it's just stuck to the top of their eye, and they're not able to get it out themselves. You can either flush it with some of the saline that I have in here, or you can try and grab it just by touching it with the dry Q-tip, and usually whatever it is that's stuck to them will end up pulling off with that. And that's actually saved my butt a couple of times with different people that I've known that have gotten things in their eyes and stuff like that. So that's one thing that I do like to keep in here. Moving on from that, I do like to keep also some sterile saline. This is good for if you're trying to flush out someone's eye. You can try and flush it out. If they're not able to tear up enough to clear something out of their eye, you can use just a little bit of normal saline, which is just sterile salt water. You can make it yourself. I wouldn't recommend it for any type of first aid type use, at least in regards to pre-packaging, just because you need to have sterile, good packaging for it. But that is something that you can do around the house. You can make your own sterile saline. But it's good also if somebody has contact lenses. You are able to use this as contact lens fluid. It's the exact same stuff to use for contact lenses. You could also use it, it's a little bit, there's not really very much in here, but you can also use it to flush out a wound. If you have like gravel and dirt and all kinds of gross stuff that's in a wound, you can use this to try and help flush it out. I think there's only about 10 mLs or so here between these two, which isn't too terribly much, but it is better than nothing, and it is nice to have these little one-time use containers. I don't really know what to call these. Alright, next up, what I have is Band-Aids. Lots of Band-Aids, because they're so frickin' useful. So I have a couple of different kinds. I have the standard 1x3 inch, and then some knuckle bandages behind that. These are just the regular plasters. Having, 5 or 6 of those in there is really nice, just to be able to, bandage up any type of scrapes, cuts, or abrasions, anything like that. Having the knuckle ones is great as well, just because they, kind of adhere to some of the more irregular surfaces or something like that. And then I have some larger ones as well, which are a little bit bigger. But it's really nice to be able to have a good selection of different sizes of Band-Aids, just to try and, keep dirt, debris, all kinds of stuff like that outside of your cuts. Another thing that I like to keep in here is some sachets of triple antibiotic ointment. This is bacitracin, neomycin, polymyxin. Whenever you're out, especially if you're outdoors or in some place where you don't have the best hygiene readily available, being able to have triple antibiotic ointment really makes a big difference, because anytime that I'm out backpacking, I'll end up getting a cut or something like that. I'll, brush up against a sharp stick, or I'll, cut myself while I'm whittling wood, or, manage to poke myself on something, get some blisters, something like that. And if you don't treat it appropriately, especially if it's something like with your feet or your hands, where it's, dirty, sweaty, getting into stuff, you're gonna get an infection. It's amazing to me how many people died in the third world or in, prior history from minor stupid bullshit, just because they didn't have something like a triple antibiotic ointment available to them at the time. And it really makes a huge difference in just being able to keep stuff clean and being able to keep it from getting infected. Another thing along those lines, which I apparently forgot to put into this specific kit, is some alcohol prep pads. Being able to have those little alcohol prep pads just to be able to clean something up, that makes a big difference. Just being able to keep things clean, keep things hygienic, keep yourself from getting an infection. Another thing that I also like to keep in here is a little set of tweezers, real small, and then also some safety pins. Safety pins are great. They have tons of different uses. You can use them to repair gear. You could use them to adhere a bandage if you had some sort of larger bandage that you were trying to work with. Or if you had something like a blister that you needed to try and drain without actually opening it. Because that does happen to me, whenever I go backpacking. Just because I'm not able to go backpacking that often, I do usually end up getting a blister. If I, haven't prepped my feet correctly, which I have been able to dial in, it's been a while, but I've been able to dial in and, figure out exactly what I need to do to keep myself from getting a blister. Usually I use something called Tensoplast or Elastoplast. It works really well. It's like a kinesiology tape, as I'll just use that, and this places where I know I tend to get hot spots, which is like on the tips of my toes. Even if I do have well-fitting boots, just, all of the, especially whenever I'm backpacking in some rougher terrain, just all of the, rubbing and everything that happens, I do tend to get blisters there just because I don't backpack that often, and I don't, my feet don't get a chance to get all the calluses and stuff like that where I rub against my boots. But these are really nice to be able to have, and they're cleaned before I put them in here to be able to drain blisters and things like that, so you can actually keep them clean and prepare them correctly so you don't get an infection. What I also like to keep in here is just some standard basic 3x3 gauze and 2x2 gauze. These are really, really nice just to be able to wrap around a finger, or provide a little bit if you have something that's a little bit more than just what could be covered by a band-aid normally. Being able to have this over top of it really does make a big difference. Just having that little bit of extra space and that extra cushioning to be able to absorb blood or something if you need it, and you can use that to cover your arm or your hand or another wound, and you could actually put other types of gauze over top of it. And these really are some of the most versatile gauze, is either a 3x3 or a 4x4 gauze. You can buy them individually wrapped. These ones, they stay perfectly clean in here, as I'm not digging through this very often, so these stay pretty clean in there. I don't really put them in another bag or anything like that. They're not sterile, but they are clean, and that's usually good enough. But these really are underrated, and I don't see enough people with just a little bit of good gauze like this. It does make a big difference and really is the most versatile, especially whenever you pair it with other types of gauze over top of it. Another type of gauze that I like to have is stretch gauze roll. So this one is, probably 2 inches wide, by 75 inches long, so that's pretty long, but it's in a pretty small form factor, especially whenever it's vacuum sealed. It smashes down, but this is really nice to be able to wrap around a wound or a hand, something like that, to help keep direct pressure on top of it and to help make sure that you're able to stop whatever bleeding that you have. These work really well, and this 2-inch one is really small, but really you don't need too terribly much more than that for any type of minor to moderate type of injury, something that's not really severe. Moving on from that, one thing that I do also keep is a little bit more gauze. This is a full gauze pack here. This is not the roller gauze, but this is just a vacuum sealed gauze pack. This one is just a really cheap one. I have some nicer ones too in some of my other kits, but this one is just the one that's in there. But being able to have just bulky gauze is really nice for any type of moderate injury, especially like a laceration or something like that. Because really, if you're not able to manage in the field either, even a moderate injury with gauze like this, and direct pressure, that really is the biggest thing. Everybody seems to love sutures, and they love to go towards sutures. Sutures really don't have that much of a place in the field. I don't carry them in any of my kits because they can get you into weird, practicing medicine without a license thing. Plus, regardless of the fact that it is a fine motor skill that takes a lot of practice to actually do, and I've been trained on how to actually do sutures, not as a paramedic. That's not within my scope of practice normally, but I have been trained to do it, and I have done it on people, and it's not something that I'm comfortable with. And even I've even been trained on it. I think that unless you are a doctor or a nurse practitioner or somebody like that who actually does it pretty regularly and knows how to do it and when to do it, I wouldn't even bother with sutures at all. It's just not something that I would put in any type of kit. So if you can't manage something with gauze or steri strips, I'd be going to a tourniquet or more direct pressure. That's going to the hospital time. So steri strips, which I also have in my kit, I have a couple of different sizes. I have a smaller one here. These are great. A lot of doctors use them post-op instead of sutures. If you have any type of wound that's gaping open, these can help keep it closed. So it kind of pulls the skin together and keeps it from, gaping open. If you couple that with some gauze and stuff like that, really you can manage some surprisingly big wounds with just some steri strips and some gauze. I really recommend everybody get these because they work really well. They're literally just some fancy tape, essentially, but it really sticks well and allows you to pull those wounds closed and keeps you from having to get sutures and stuff like that. And it does really help. I've used them on myself. I've used them on other people. They work really great, and they're super easy to pack down. But if you look at that, I got plenty here for a pretty large wound. I'd be able to manage with this, and they come in all different shapes and sizes too. One of the other things that I carry is a Right in the Rain EMS notepad sheet. I have the notebook and I cut the sheets out because these are really nice because they are waterproof and anything that you write on them isn't going to run off if you have the right kind of pen or if you use a pencil. I have a handy dandy IKEA pencil that I like to keep in there because they really don't mind if you go in and take a handful of them. But these are really nice because you can sharpen it with a knife or something like that. If you have a pen, pens aren't necessarily going to work all the time, but a pencil will. And it's really nice to be able to have the date, the patient's name, their sex, chief complaint, any type of vital signs that you're able to take, but specifically their medications, allergies, and medical history, and any type of notes that you can take. If you are going to be transferring somebody to a higher level of medical care, it's really nice to be able to have those types of things. Date of birth, name, what happened, any other information that you can get to keep with the patient, especially if, their status changes or their mental status changes, between whenever you get there and more medical care gets there. It's really nice to have that documented. And then these are really nice because they're waterproof, and then the pencil isn't going to rub off at all. The last thing that I keep in my kit is way down at the bottom because it's going to be the last thing that I use, which is a nice Ziploc biohazard bag. These are really, really useful to clean up all your stuff. If you have bloody stuff from somebody that you're working on or even yourself, it's really nice to be able to put this stuff into a biohazard bag where nobody's going to mess with it, and you can seal it up and then you can throw it away and you can keep it clean. It's really nice to be able to have these. Sometimes you can snag these up if you know where to look. But just having a nice Ziploc bag is also useful, but also having one that's marked biohazard is really good for cleaning up any type of bodily fluids or anything like that. And if I do use the first aid kit, the vacuum sealed one, that doesn't have the zipper, I can put everything in here and it'll stay nice and dry. So this is something that I really like to keep down in the bottom of my kit, and it really takes up very, very little room. Alright, well that's about it for the contents of my standard issue first aid kit. Again, my name is Misanthropic Gods. I hope that you've enjoyed this segment. I'm hoping to come back later for possibly some more segments on some other first aid gear or other gear just in general. I would like to do a segment on my recce kit / adventure kit, and I also do have some other, trauma specific gear that I could get into if you guys would be interested in that, if we get good feedback. And if you would like to give us feedback, you can get a hold of me through V, or you could also come and join us on the Rangers Discord. You should be able to ask him and he'll be able to get you a link for it, but we'd be more than happy to have you there, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that anyone has. Look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much.
So thanks for watching the episode all the way through. That's great. Really helps the YouTube demographics and all their analytical stuff. Means that more people get offered this in their streams when they're looking for stuff that fits in with what we're doing here. And thank you to both Harlequin and Misanthropic Gods for providing content for this episode. Keep it up. This is what I always wanted to do with Rangers TV and Urban Agoges, is get people to contribute sections so that we're seeing a lot of different viewpoints. So if you've got a section that you'd like to include, or you'd like to add, or you think we haven't covered and you want to shoot, or you've just got a suggestion for other sections, that's what comments are for. Get in touch, make it happen. Finally get the sort of TV that we've been missing ever since the days of patrolling, which is what I'm trying to turn this into, really. So, thank you to everybody that helped, thank you to everybody that contributed, and thank you to everybody that's watching it, and all the people that support this channel. It's amazing, it really helps. So, do all the usual stuff, and thanks for watching, and do take care.